Hello, neighbors.
Hello, Morris.
Yes, I'm Morris, and this is Elyse with me as usual. And welcome to another episode of RTC Life Skill Education Lesson thing. Today's topic, girls and boys, is going to be about language. I think it's a really important thing to talk about how the world sees us and how we see ourselves is very attached to the language we use to describe ourselves. And that covers people with disabilities and people without without disabilities.
Able-bodied
Able people,
people, another phrase that could be
able
controversial.
people, non neurodivergent and
Typical.
non-disabled.
Typical is the word we use in the
Typical,
early
yes,
childhood.
typical. Atypical, yes. The people that stand out in the world, because most people are disabled one way or another. So, anyway, that's another topic for another day. But seriously, everybody in the world is defined by the language they use. Either people use the language towards them or they use the language towards themselves. So it tells you a lot about who you're talking to or how the person feels about themselves by the language they use. And I'll give you an example. I worked for a company and they were trying to be very PC. And they were so PC that they would change the language they used like every 6 months. Like we ended up calling our clients people we serve because we didn't want to call them clients because somehow that made them less. And then we were debating on using the term disabled person versus person with a disability. And that doesn't sound like it's a big deal, but it is quite a big deal because person with a disability kind of makes the disability like
It puts the
I
people first, right? Like kind of like they even call it people first language. So
yeah,
like,
it is people first language.
right, we're looking at the person before we look at the disability, right?
And I mean that can work for look again, like I said at the beginning, if you feel like you want to define yourself in a certain way, good for you. That's fine. However you want to define yourself, cool. But you should be aware of how subtle changes in the way you speak gives people a different outlook of you and you an outlook of yourself.
So what are some terms you're talking about?
So again, people with disability versus disabled person. When you say, I like to say disabled person. I'm in a wheelchair. It's a big wheelchair. I'm a big guy. Nobody's going to mistake me for somebody who's not in a wheelchair. Like, there's no getting around it. I am a disabled person, and I'm not going to hide from it either. You know what I mean? Like,
Your
I am
wheelchair is part of who you are.
exactly, and it's always been a part of who I am. I actually didn't get a wheelchair until I was 11, my first wheelchair, which is weird. I was in a stroller when I was a little kid. That's a story for another day. But yeah, the wheelchair sort of you're in it so long that it sort of becomes a car you drive 24/7, not 24/7. But
Where
whenever
you
you're
fit
out in
in.
public, you're in that car and it's your own car and you can take it where you want to take it, especially if you have a power chair. If you have manuals, there are people who can do amazing things with manual chairs. I'm not one of those people. I was a little more physically adept when I was younger. I'm not quite there anymore.
Not so sprightly anymore.
Yeah, I'm not so sprightly anymore. And so the power chair has given me an amazing amount of independence. But yes, we're talking about language, not about disability and power chairs. But yeah, there are people who don't want the disability to define them, and that's fine. But I can't run away from my disability. I don't want to run away from my disability because it does define me, and it's gotten me where I am for better or worse.
So what are some other terms that we people talk
Okay,
about?
okay. So when I was a kid, let's see, let's say
The 70s?
no, not the 70s. The 90s. Jeez,
Well,
not that old.
you were born in the
I was
70s.
born in the 70s, but I wasn't thinking about language in the 70s. In the 90s, I was thinking about language. And a popular term in the 90s was physically challenged. That was, I think, one of the first like PC terms for someone with a disability was physically challenged.
That was when we moved off of the R word, which is very popular in the 70s.
Well, see, the R word is
Share the R word.
the R word with
Like,
a slur,
right, it was a
but
slur,
it's not
but it
necessarily
didn't
a slur.
start that way, right?
Yeah,
Like when
I
I was a
mean,
kid, people would be like, "Oh, that's so retarded," and it would be almost more of like an intellectual slur, right? It's like you're
right,
calling someone
right,
stupid.
right. So that like,
But didn't it come from
well,
like
retarded
actual
means
medical terminology?
yeah, the word retarded means stop, like something has stopped. So if you're mentally retarded, what it means is your growth has stopped. So, like, my uncle was mentally retarded, or what do we call it now, where it's intellectually
Intellectually
disabled.
disabled.
Yeah. So my uncle was intellectually disabled, and his mental growth, he stopped, I think he was around a 12-year-old. So, you wouldn't be able to discuss difficult concepts with him. But I mean, it's not like he was a vegetable or anything like that. He was a great guy and he could sing about meals a lot. He loved singing about meals. That's another story for another day.
Or the mule song another time.
Yeah, I'll play you the meal song one day. But yeah, but yeah, his mental growth had stopped. And I'm talking about brain growth. I'm not talking about like, learning things and knowledge and whatever. I'm talking about like actual brain growth. And that's where the word retarded came from. So, yeah, it was a medical term. And actually, I remember finding some paperwork in my mom's file cabinet when I was a kid, and it said that I was physically retarded. Physically retarded, now, not mentally retarded, physically
Are you
retarded.
sure? No, I'm just kidding.
Oh, jeez.
Sorry. I've known you way too long.
Yeah, yeah,
Right, because
yeah,
that
yeah.
was the medical term. That's how it was
Yeah,
described. Now, when I got to know you, you like to challenge political correctness and you use the word cripple a lot.
I did. I did, and I still do. It started in high school. I had this bully kid at school, and he called me a cripple, and my heart sank. And I felt defeated, and I felt really bad. And so I said, you know what? I'm not going to feel that bad anymore. I'm not going to let that word affect me. So once I got to high school and college, well, I mean, I was already in high school. Once I got to college, I started calling myself cripple, and I started telling people that word was okay to use. At least when you're with me, you can use that word.
So I just looked it up, and the actual definition is not so offensive. It's basically saying like to cripple someone, right? To make them physically disabled, or someone with a severe limitation of a specific kind.
Now, I'll tell you what is a really, really horrible word, invalid. And there's no getting around that one. Like, I don't think you can find a
Well,
good
and
definition of that one.
invalid, didn't they use that term for people who were put into like homes, not homes necessarily, but like a sanitarium or
Well,
institutions?
a lot of disabled people were called invalids. Even my grandfather called me an invalid once. And I don't know how many people are aware of the wheelchair company Invacare, but that's where the word comes from, invalid. So unless they're going to say, no, 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 that's not an invalid, it's some other word. But no,
So I understand you may not follow the trend, but what is if someone met someone and was describing them, which I don't know if you want to use that to describe them, what would be the most appropriate way to describe you?
okay. So I think I can explain this a little in a different way. When you are a non-disabled typical person, You come to somebody who's disabled and you say to them, "Oh, what is your disability?" That's what you're, because the word is going to come up. A word to describe your affliction is going to come up because it's noticeable. If it's noticeable, we have a lot of people who have invisible disabilities.
So I've referred to you when I've talked to people about my friend Morris,
My boy.
generally talking about you as a quirky, kind of bizarre person. But I would say that you have cerebral palsy and are wheelchair bound. Is that the proper way to describe?
We're wheelchair bound. That's interesting. Okay. So that is a hot word.
Oh, it is?
Yeah, wheelchair bound is means that you can't do anything outside of your wheelchair, right? Because if you think about it, so what people in wheelchairs, and actually this is one I use to describe myself. I don't know why I use this term because I am not a politically correct person, but I do use the word wheelchair user.
Okay.
Okay, so that is the
Wheelchair
term.
user versus wheelchair bound.
Yeah, wheelchair bound is restrictive. Wheelchair user means you need to use a wheelchair.
Got it.
So yeah, there's that. But like I was saying, if you come to somebody and say, "What is your disability?" The word disability is going through a bit of a controversy right now. There are two camps. There's the camp that says we don't want to use the word disabled anymore because that means I'm disabled. I'm not able, and people have a problem with that. And there's the other camp, I think it's the Generation X camp, that says, look, and like disability is not a in our outlook, it's not that bad of a word. And in my own personal opinion, when we start policing words, it becomes a problem. Because if we're always policing the words, like if we keep admonishing people for words they've used for decades, they're not going to want to talk to us anymore because they're not going to know, like, oh, here's what to say.
They're gonna be nervous to say the wrong thing.
Exactly. So
Well,
that
I have another
communication
thought.
off.
I have another thought.
Go for it.
When I describe my friends, when I describe people or speak to people, I don't describe them by their color of their hair. I don't start by the color of their skin. I talk about who they are.
That
And
girl
I
with the
think we have
glasses.
to do the same thing. So instead of calling you wheelchair bound or wheelchair user, I'm just going to call you reckless driver and go from there.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Although I don't traffic anytime recently, so
Well,
So wrap
see,
it up for us, Morris.
know what?
Wrap it up.
Okay. Okay, so I'm gonna wrap it up for this episode. We will be having another episode about this because this is a vastly important,
An
a
important
vast.
topic.
It's a very important topic, and it's a definitive topic in my mind. The more we can understand the language we use, the more our outward ableism and our inner ableism, because disabled people can be, I'm not going to say are, disabled people can be ableist.
That's for our next video.
That, you know what, that is a good topic. Anyway, wrapping it up. Thank you very much for listening to us banter about words. And I would really like some people to actually comment on this video and share some experiences about the words they use, the words they've heard, or the
Tell what you're comfortable with. What do
affect
you,
some words that, how do these words that we've talked about today, how do they affect you? What do you think of them? Okay, that's it. Like and subscribe, and we'll see you on the other side.
bye-bye.
Bye bye.